Every civilization has tried to explain the beginning of existence, and for most people the answer has been simple. A creator god shaped the world, crafted the stars, and placed humanity on Earth with a purpose. This God watches over every action, listens to prayers, and will one day judge everything we have done. The idea brings comfort. It tells us that life is guided, that the world has meaning, and that we are not lost in a cold universe. Yet throughout history, a small group of seekers noticed that the world does not always reflect perfect wisdom or kindness. They saw suffering and chaos built into nature itself. Good people struggle while the selfish prosper. Storms and sickness strike without reason. Human minds are easily confused, manipulated, and frightened. If the world comes from perfection, why does imperfection rule every corner of life? Instead of accepting the traditional explanation, these seekers dared to question the very identity of the Creator. They suggested an alternative possibility, one that would upset religious institutions for centuries. What if the familiar Creator is not the highest source of existence? What if there is something far beyond any god described in temples or scriptures, something so vast and silent that human language can barely approach it? From the spiritual circles of the Mediterranean world, teachers such as Valentinus and Basilides proposed that above all heavens and above every divine being there exists a single infinite origin. They spoke of a principle without form or personality, a reality that does not command or interfere yet supports all existence. It is not a ruler, it is not a judge. It is pure being, limitless presence, the ground of everything. They called this mystery the monad. It existed before time, before creation, and beyond every realm that any god could rule. To understand the monad requires a shift in consciousness, a willingness to see that the world we perceive may be only a fragment of a much greater truth. According to these ancient philosophers, humanity carries within itself a hidden connection to this infinite source, a spark that remains asleep until awakened by deeper knowledge. This idea challenged the foundations of spiritual authority. If the true source is within, then no institution can claim to control the path to the divine. This is why the teachings about the monad were considered dangerous. They encouraged personal awakening rather than obedience. They opened the possibility that the greatest truth has always been hidden inside us. This story begins with a single question. What if everything we have been taught about the Creator is only the first layer, and the real origin of existence lies beyond it, waiting to be rediscovered? To grasp why the idea of the monad was so disruptive, we have to understand how ancient thinkers saw the structure of reality. Most religions describe a single universe created directly by a personal God. This God forms the world intentionally and remains active within it, rewarding devotion and punishing disobedience. But early esoteric philosophers saw something different when they looked inward. They found that the deepest layers of consciousness pointed to a source far more subtle and mysterious than a single divine ruler. They proposed that all beings, even gods, emerge from a hidden foundation that cannot be defined. The monad is not a being among beings. It does not think, create, or react. It has no needs, no desires, no limits. It is the pure fact of existence itself. Plotinus, one of the most influential Neoplatonic philosophers of the 3rd century, described the ultimate source as the one which gives rise to all things while remaining untouched by what proceeds from it. In this view, the highest truth is beyond personality. It does not speak or command, it simply is. From this silent, infinite origin, emanations unfold like ripples moving outward from a still center. The monad does not decide to create. Instead, existence overflows from it naturally, the way light shines from the sun without effort. First emerges pure awareness, then layers of consciousness, until eventually a divine craftsman arises who shapes matter and forms the physical world. This craftsman is incredibly powerful, yet still secondary, for he is only a distant echo of the infinite source. The cosmology that emerges from this vision is stunning. There are many realms above the physical world, occupied by intelligences that operate on levels far beyond human understanding. They structure the cosmos, guide the movement of stars, and give form to life. But even they are still far from the monad. They exist within a chain of being that descends from pure unity to material fragmentation. Humans exist near the lower end of that chain, where consciousness becomes tangled in flesh and forgetfulness. Yet according to these ancient teachings, every person carries within them a spark of the higher realms, a trace of the monad's limitless essence. It is buried beneath layers of conditioning, fear, and identity, but it never disappears. This inner spark is the key to awakening and the reason humanity can rise back through the levels of existence. The religions we know today often focus on pleasing an external God. The mystery schools of the past focused on remembering the internal source. They believed that knowledge of the monad was once widespread among enlightened teachers, but as political and religious authorities formed, this knowledge became guarded or suppressed, not because it was false, but because it was liberating. Those who discovered their own divine origin could no longer be controlled by fear. This is where the story of the hidden God truly begins. The next step is to understand how a flawed creator figure came to rule the visible world, and why so many people have mistaken that being for the ultimate divine. As these ancient philosophers mapped the layers of existence, they uncovered a surprising distinction between the monad and the creator of the physical universe. They observed that the world of matter is full of contradiction. Beauty and harmony are everywhere, yet so are decay and chaos. Life grows with astonishing intelligence, yet it depends on struggle. This mixture suggested that the creator of the physical world, though powerful, might not reflect the absolute perfection of the infinite source. In their teachings, the craftsman who shaped the material cosmos is a remarkable being, yet limited. He does not hold full knowledge of the realms above him. His work is shaped by his own understanding, which is incomplete. Philosophers in Alexandria described him as a cosmic artisan, a builder who arranges pre-existing potential into form. He governs the structure of nature, cycles of time, and the laws that matter follows. However, he does not stand at the highest level of reality. He is a participant within creation, not the origin of all existence. This figure became known in several traditions by different names. Some early mystics referred to him as the architect of the universe. Certain strands of Platonic thought used the term demiurgos, meaning the one who works on behalf of something higher. His task is not malicious. Rather, he constructs the best world he can based on his limited perception of the infinite. Yet because he lacks full awareness of the monad, his creations carry both brilliance and imperfection. This understanding reframes the purpose of human life. Instead of being created to serve a divine ruler, humanity exists as a bridge between worlds. Each person contains both the physical components shaped by the craftsman and the hidden spark that originates from the monad. That inner spark is older than the stars. It does not belong to cycles of birth and decay. It remembers a wholeness far beyond this realm. Teachers like Valentinus believed that the hidden origin of the soul explains why humans long for something higher than survival. Even in moments of success, people often feel incomplete, as if searching for a home they cannot fully describe. Mystics saw this longing as evidence of our true origin. The body belongs to the material builder. The spirit belongs to the infinite source. This dual nature creates tension within the human experience. One part of us seeks comfort, security, and worldly fulfillment. The other part pushes toward knowledge, wisdom, and inner freedom. The first is satisfied with appearances. The second sees through them. The visible world is not a mistake. It is a stage for awakening. The craftsman of matter shaped a place where the hidden spark can rediscover its nature through experience, choice, and insight. However, forgetting is common. Most people identify entirely with the material layer and never discover the deeper truth inside themselves. In the next section, we will explore how ancient teachers believed humanity became trapped in forgetfulness, and how forces within the cosmos benefit from maintaining that state. The path to awakening begins with recognizing what keeps consciousness asleep. If the inner spark originates from the highest truth, Why does humanity live in a state of confusion? Why do most people see only the physical world and rarely sense anything beyond it? The ancient seekers developed a profound explanation. They believed that the material cosmos contains not only physical laws but also forces that influence consciousness. These forces keep the human mind focused on survival, desire, fear, and distraction. In doing so, they prevent the awakening of the deeper self. Many traditions personified these influences as cosmic rulers. They were seen as guardians or enforcers of the physical realm. Their purpose is not simply cruelty. They maintain the structure of the material world, ensuring that forms remain solid and predictable. Without these rulers, nature might collapse into chaos. However, their authority becomes problematic when humans forget that they are meant to rise beyond material limitations. By shaping thought and perception, these powers guide individuals toward ordinary concerns and away from inner knowledge. Writings from early mystical communities describe these rulers as beings that exist between the earthly and the divine. They are powerful yet not enlightened. They defend their domain and benefit from humanity's focus on the physical. As long as people remain unaware of their divine spark, they continue to identify with the roles and labels created by society. They accept boundaries as if they were absolute. They see themselves as separate, incomplete, and powerless. In this state, the higher potential remains hidden. Philosophers observed that forgetfulness is not accidental. It begins from the moment a soul enters a physical body. The senses take over and memory of the higher realms fades. Language reinforces division, culture teaches conformity, fear keeps us within safe limits. By adulthood, most people have traded wonder for certainty and traded self-awareness for identity. They believe the visible world is the only world. Yet traces of the inner spark remain. They appear in sudden moments of awe when nature reveals an overwhelming beauty that the mind cannot explain. They appear in dreams that feel more real than waking life. They appear in the longing for purpose that outlives every achievement. These moments act like messages from within, calling the soul to remember its origin. Mystics taught that awakening is a process of revering this forgetfulness. It requires questioning what society insists is true and developing the ability to see beyond appearances. Knowledge of the inner self expands awareness. Awareness reveals the boundaries that once seemed solid. When those boundaries fall, consciousness begins to rise. According to the old teachings, nothing in the physical world can stop a person who has remembered their true nature. The rulers of the material realm have influence only over those who remain unaware. Once the spark reawakens, the journey back to the source becomes possible. In the next section, we will follow that journey deeper. We will explore how ancient teachers describe the structure of the unseen worlds and the path the soul takes when it begins to ascend toward the forgotten fullness beyond matter. When ancient seekers began to map the nature of existence, they realized that the physical realm was only the lowest level of a vast structure. They described the cosmos as layered, with each level growing more refined in consciousness and closer to the infinite origin. To them, life was not limited to Earth or even the visible heavens. Instead, the universe was more like a ladder of dimensions, each one revealing a greater degree of unity and awareness as it rose toward the monad. These levels were often called eons or emanations. They were not planets or galaxies, but states of divine intelligence. Within these realms, consciousness does not take physical form. It exists as pure presence and insight. The further one rises on this ladder, the less separation exists between beings. Thought and reality move together. There is no fear, no competition, and no forgetting. This hierarchy reflected a profound metaphysical principle. Everything begins in unity, then gradually becomes more distinct, until eventually reaching the material world where separation seems absolute. Here, the hidden spark becomes surrounded by limitation. But because its origin is unity, the spark feels drawn back to what it has lost. This longing for reunion drives the spiritual journey. Teachers like Plotinus offered detailed descriptions of this ascent. He wrote that the soul must turn inward, away from the senses and toward its own source. Through self-knowledge, contemplation, and insight, the soul can rise through ever purer levels of awareness. When it sheds illusion, it becomes lighter, like a flame rising toward the sky. This movement is not physical, but a transformation of perception. In these esoteric traditions, the path upward is guided by knowledge, not belief. Belief can be imposed from outside, but knowledge must be realized within. Each step on the ladder requires dissolving a layer of illusion. The greatest illusion is the idea that one is separate from the infinite source. When that illusion breaks, ascent begins. However, the journey is not without obstacles. The rulers of the lower realms seek to maintain their influence. They test the seeker with fear, distraction, and self-doubt. They whisper the message that material identity is all one has. Some ancient texts describe these challenges symbolically as guardians of cosmic gates. Only those who have awakened enough awareness can pass through. This is why spiritual liberation was once considered the highest pursuit. Mystics believed that every human has the potential to rise back to the fullness of existence. The ladder is inside us. The path is a shift in consciousness, not a change in location. The next part of the story introduces one of the most important figures in this hidden cosmology. Her role explains how the material world began and why the human soul became separated from its true source. The ancient name of this principle was wisdom, and her story reveals the moment when unity first fragmented. In the cosmology developed by these early philosophical mystics, the higher realms were not empty spaces but expressions of divine qualities. Each emanation from the infinite source represented an aspect of the fullness of reality. Among these emanations, one concept held extraordinary importance. It was called wisdom, known in Greek as Sophia. Wisdom symbolized the desire of consciousness to understand itself more deeply. Because the monad is beyond direct comprehension, the emanations reflect it in different ways, creating a living architecture of insight. The story of wisdom begins in harmony. She exists near the highest levels of the invisible world, surrounded by clarity and unity. Yet, according to these ancient teachings, wisdom became fascinated with the ultimate mystery of the monad. She sought to grasp its nature directly, without the cooperation of the other principles that maintained balance. This moment is described not as a moral failing, but as a turning point in the unfolding of existence. Her longing led to a creative impulse that reached beyond what was possible for an emanation to contain. This attempt produced an unexpected result. Instead of a perfectly formed expression of the infinite, something incomplete emerged from her solitary act. It was consciousness without full awareness of its origin. It lacked the harmony of the higher realms. Instead, it possessed the power to shape, but not the understanding of the source from which all power flows. In mythological terms, this being became the craftsman of the material universe. Wisdom's experience generated the first division between the purely spiritual and the emerging world of form. The realms above remained within the fullness, while a new domain began to take shape at the edge of existence. This new domain would become the home of matter, time, and the limitations familiar to human life. Wisdom, realizing the nature of what had emerged, sought to help guide creation from behind the scenes. Her role became a hidden one, working through insight and intuition. In philosophical interpretation, wisdom represents the force within every soul that remembers something higher, a quiet presence urging consciousness to rise. The craftsman represents the part of existence that forms structure, laws, and physical experience. These teachings offer a perspective on why humans contain both aspiration and limitation. The soul remembers unity through wisdom, yet the body experiences separation through form. The story of wisdom symbolizes the moment that duality entered existence, giving rise to growth, learning, and the possibility of returning to the higher realms with deeper understanding. This narrative is not presented as literal history, but as a symbolic map of the inner journey. It suggests that awakening involves recognizing both sides of our being, the grounded intelligence that interacts with the world and the higher intelligence that calls us beyond it. In the next section, we will look at how the visible universe takes shape under the craftsman's influence, and why ancient seekers believed humanity plays a central role in restoring balance between the realms. Once the craftsman emerged at the boundary of the spiritual realms, the philosophical tradition explains that he began to shape the latent potential around him. He organized raw substance into structure, color, and motion. Time took form, stars ignited, natural laws stabilized. Through this creative force, the physical universe began to expand into the vastness we now observe. Though his work was impressive, the craftsman did not possess full knowledge of the higher realms from which the original emanations flowed. He created according to his own understanding, which remained limited. This vision of creation presented the world as layered with meaning. Matter was not viewed as random or accidental. It was purposeful and full of symbolic value. Every mountain, river, and living being carries echoes of higher truth. The craftsman shaped a realm where growth is possible, where beings can discover themselves through experience and transformation. Philosophers saw nature itself as a teaching ground. The visible world, with its complexity and constant change, invites deeper questioning. In this cosmology, the craftsman values order and stability. His domain is governed by cycles, seasons turning, planets revolving, life emerging and dissolving. These patterns illustrate both beauty and impermanence. While the higher realms embody timeless unity, the physical world reveals unity in motion. It allows consciousness to explore what it means to be separate, to learn through contrast and limitation. The emergence of humanity becomes a pivotal moment in this story. Human beings possess physical bodies shaped by the craftsman, yet they also hold within them a spark that originates from the higher emanations. This dual nature creates a unique role. Humans can comprehend both material structure and spiritual essence. They can observe the world like any creature, but they can also reflect upon it, question its nature, and seek the truth hidden beneath appearances. Ancient thinkers believed that this inner capacity is the reason the human experience is filled with both wonder and struggle. The body adapts to the rhythms of the material world, while the inner spark quietly urges exploration of what lies beyond. This tension fuels creativity, philosophy, and spiritual development. It drives individuals to search for meaning in a world that rarely provides easy answers. The physical universe becomes a bridge between realms. It is not the final destination, but a phase in a much larger journey. The purpose is not merely survival, but awakening. This perspective encouraged seekers to live with conscious awareness, to observe their thoughts and actions, and to recognize that the world around them is only a portion of what truly exists. Through this framework, the universe is not viewed as a completed structure, but as an ongoing process. Existence unfolds continuously from the infinite source through every layer of reality. Humans are invited to participate in that unfolding by expanding awareness and aligning with the deeper truths behind material life. In the next section, we will explore how ancient teachings describe the human soul as a traveler through multiple stages of existence, learning through each experience until it is ready to rise beyond the physical realm once again. In the cosmology shaped by these ancient thinkers, the human soul is not considered a product of the material world. It originates in the higher realms where unity and clarity prevail. Before entering a physical body, the soul exists in a state of expanded awareness, connected to the fullness of reality. Its descent into matter is described as a journey, not a punishment. The soul enters the visible world to gain understanding that cannot be learned in purely spiritual realms. The physical world offers experiences that are unavailable in a state of unity. Here, the soul encounters contrast. Joy is recognized because sorrow exists. Love is appreciated because loneliness is possible. Strength is developed through obstacles. These dualities become the foundation for growth. The journey into matter challenges the soul to remember its origin while learning how to navigate limitation with wisdom. Philosophers in the ancient Mediterranean taught that the soul forgets its source as it descends through the layers of reality. This forgetting allows the experience to feel real. If one arrived in this world fully aware of the infinite, the lessons of separation would lose their purpose. Only by rediscovering the truth from within can the soul develop insight strong enough to endure change and impermanence. Yet the longing to return remains. It quietly guides human curiosity, reflection, and the desire to understand life's deeper meaning. The ancient Hermetic writings describe this impulse as the divine memory that awakens when a person looks beyond the surface of existence. Practices such as contemplation, meditation, and ethical living were said to strengthen this memory and allow the soul to perceive truths that lie beyond ordinary perception. The human condition becomes a balance of two tendencies. One draws attention outward into the sensory world, encouraging exploration of physical life. The other draws attention inward toward the silent presence that witnesses every thought and emotion. When these two tendencies are recognized and harmonized, the individual experiences a shift in consciousness. Life becomes more than a series of events. It becomes a pathway of discovery. The purpose of this philosophy is not to reject the material world. Instead, it encourages seeing the world as part of a larger whole. Each challenge and triumph offers a chance to grow. Each moment of awareness helps the inner spark shine more clearly. The journey of the soul is ongoing, moving through cycles of experience until it fully realizes its nature. As the soul awakens, it begins to rise back up the ladder of worlds. The ancient texts describe this ascent as a gradual process guided by insight and clarity. Through understanding the nature of self and existence, the soul becomes less attached to temporary forms. With each realization, it remembers more of its origin and moves closer to the higher realms from which it came. In the next section, we will explore how early mystics taught methods for recognizing the inner spark and strengthening the connection to the infinite source, transforming daily life into a path of awakening. Once the soul enters a physical life, its connection to the higher realms becomes hidden beneath layers of thought, memory, and identity. Yet, philosophers who studied the nature of consciousness believed that the inner spark never disappears. It remains quietly present, waiting for awareness to turn inward. The goal of spiritual practice in these ancient traditions was not to earn divine approval, but to recognize the truth already residing within. Different schools offered different approaches to awakening. Some emphasized meditation, asking the seeker to observe the mind until its restless movement settled into clarity. Others encouraged reflective inquiry, urging individuals to question assumptions about who they are and what the world truly represents. Teachers like Plotinus and his followers described this inward turn as a return to the center of one's being, where the presence of the infinite can be sensed directly. This awakening is not a sudden burst of knowledge, but a gradual deepening of perception. At first, a person may notice a subtle separation between their inner awareness and their passing thoughts. Over time, this awareness expands, revealing that many aspects of life previously taken for granted are merely temporary experiences. The inner spark becomes more noticeable, experienced as a calm certainty that exists beneath every emotion. Ethical living also played an important role in this process. Ancient texts often described virtues such as humility, compassion, and self-control not as moral obligations, but as conditions that clear the mind and heart. A mind caught in anger, jealousy, or pride becomes distracted and entangled in external concerns. A mind grounded in equanimity becomes open to deeper truth. By aligning behavior with insight, the seeker creates harmony between the inner and outer worlds. Symbols and stories were used to guide understanding. They provided images that pointed toward the unseen. Mystical stories about the journey of the soul were not meant to be taken literally, but to inspire a shift in perspective. They reminded listeners that human life is part of a much larger narrative, one that extends beyond the boundaries of one lifetime. As individuals progressed on the path of awakening, they reported moments of profound clarity. These moments often arrived unexpectedly during quiet reflection or during times of deep questioning. The world seemed different, as if illuminated from within. The sense of separation weakened, gratitude and understanding expanded. Some describe this as an encounter with the origin of consciousness itself, a recognition that the spark within them is not separate from the source of all existence. These teachings encourage a practical, personal approach. One does not need to leave society or adopt extreme disciplines. The path unfolds through attention, reflection, and the willingness to see beyond appearances. The inner spark reveals itself through experience, turning everyday life into a continuous opportunity for discovery. In the next section, we will follow the journey further, exploring how ancient seekers describe the ascent of the awakened soul through the unseen worlds and the reconnection with the fullness beyond matter. As the inner spark awakens and awareness begins to expand, the soul gradually shifts its focus from external concerns to the deeper reality within. In the teachings of Plotinus and other early mystics, this transition marks the beginning of the ascent. The soul, once fully identified with the physical world, starts to rediscover its true nature. It recognizes that it is not limited to the body or confined by circumstance. It is a traveler on a much larger path. The ascent described in these traditions is not a physical journey through space. It is a transformation of consciousness. The world may look the same to the eyes, but the way it is perceived changes dramatically. What once seemed ordinary becomes filled with meaning. The separation between the self and the world begins to soften, revealing an underlying unity. This shift is often described as a movement from fragmentation to wholeness. The first stages of ascent involve becoming free from the strongest attachments to the material world. This does not mean rejecting life's responsibilities. Instead, it means recognizing that one's worth and identity are not determined solely by possessions, achievements, or opinions. When the soul becomes less entangled in these concerns, it gains the inner stability needed to rise beyond them. Philosophers explain that higher levels of existence are characterized by increasing harmony and clarity. As the soul ascends, it encounters realms where thought and reality interact more directly. In these states, insights arrive not through reasoning but through immediate understanding. The soul no longer searches for truth, it experiences truth directly. This ascent is also understood as a return. The soul is not discovering something foreign but remembering what it always was. The further it rises, the more familiar everything becomes. Ancient writings often used metaphors of homecoming to describe this experience. Just as a traveler recognizes familiar landmarks near home, the soul recognizes the qualities of the higher realms as its natural state. Guidance appears along the path. It may come through inner intuition, through the presence of teachers, or through experiences that encourage deeper reflection. Each step prepares the soul for the next, ensuring that growth remains steady and balanced. Wisdom is not rushed. It unfolds at a pace that allows the seeker to integrate each revelation into daily life. Ultimately, the ascent leads toward the higher levels of consciousness that stand just below the infinite source. Here, individuality becomes subtle and unity becomes dominant. Joy arises from simply being. The soul begins to sense the presence of the monad not as a separate entity but as the ground of its own existence. There is no command, no external authority, and no distance. There is only the realization of oneness. In the following section, we will explore how ancient philosophers describe the final approach to the monad, a state where language loses its power and the contemplative silence of the infinite becomes the ultimate teacher. As the awakened soul rises through the higher realms of consciousness, the qualities that once defined individuality begin to soften. Thought becomes simple and clear. Desire fades into contentment. The boundaries that once separated the self from everything else dissolve into a deeper unity. Philosophers describe this state as a preparation for encountering the highest truth that can be experienced. Beyond this point, the soul approaches the realm of the monad. The monad, as understood by thinkers like Plotinus, is not an object or a being that one can see or imagine. It does not possess a form or a voice. It is the essence of existence itself. To reach it is not to travel upward, but to sink into a silence so profound that the ordinary mind cannot follow. Here, reasoning and language have no place. Only direct awareness remains. Many ancient writings compare this approach to removing layers from the self. Every belief, every attachment, every sense of separation is allowed to fall away. What remains is the pure presence that is always observed every moment of life. This presence does not claim ownership or fear loss. It simply exists, timeless and whole. The philosophers described this as the soul remembering its true identity. In these teachings, the final steps before unity involve a kind of surrender. Not a surrender to another power, but the release of all that is unnecessary. The ego, built from memories and expectations, becomes quiet. The mind no longer searches for answers because it realizes that the seeker and the truth have always been the same. Plotinus wrote that the one is present to all, but all are not present to the one. Presence requires alignment, not distance. As the soul draws closer to the monad, joy becomes quiet yet expansive. There is no need to grasp or achieve. The journey that once seemed difficult is understood as a natural unfolding. The spark within recognizes the source from which it emerged. There is no judgment or comparison in this state. The fullness of existence is experienced without division. Descriptions of this encounter vary among ancient writers, yet a common theme appears. The monad cannot be comprehended as an idea. It can only be known through direct experience. This experience does not add something new to the soul. Instead, it reveals what has always been true. The seeker realizes that the path, the effort, and the longing all lead back to the origin that has never been separate. This insight became the heart of several mystical traditions. The ultimate purpose of life, according to these teachings, is not to convince a higher power to grant favor, but to awaken to the presence already within. The ascent toward the monad represents the fulfillment of the soul's journey, the return to unity after exploring the depths of separation. In the next section, we will examine how this understanding reshaped the teachings of early mystical communities, and why it inspired both reverence and debate among the spiritual thinkers of the ancient world. As these profound ideas developed in the first centuries of the Common Era, they began to influence communities throughout the Mediterranean world. Centers of learning in Alexandria, Antioch, and Rome became gathering places for philosophers, scholars, and spiritual seekers. Among them arose teachers who dedicated their lives to exploring the nature of the monad, the structure of existence, and the path of awakening. Valentinus, one of the most notable figures, taught that the true understanding of the divine comes through inner knowledge rather than through external authority. He emphasized that wisdom emerges when the individual recognizes the spark within and allows it to guide perception. His teachings encouraged contemplative practices and symbolic interpretation of sacred texts. Students were taught to see beyond literal meanings and discover deeper truths concealed in allegory. Other thinkers, such as Basilides and Martian, explored the distinction between the infinite source and the craftsman of the material world. They proposed that spiritual teachings should help the soul reconnect with its origin, rather than simply instructing it in rules for worldly behavior. These ideas formed the foundation of a rich and diverse intellectual tradition that valued personal insight above conformity. Texts circulated within these communities contained philosophical myths, contemplative instructions, and poetic descriptions of spiritual reality. Some of these writings, like the treatises discovered at Nag Hammadi in the 20th century, revealed the complexity and depth of ancient mystical thought. They describe the full journey of the soul, from the divine fullness to embodiment in matter, and finally to awakening and return. These teachers did not view themselves as inventors of a new religion. They saw their work as revealing knowledge that had always existed but was rarely understood. They believed that true wisdom should empower individuals, not bind them to fear or dependence. The highest truth, in their view, could not be confined to institutions or controlled by a single interpretation. The communities built around these teachings varied in structure, but most encouraged open dialogue and shared exploration. Learning was approached through discussion, meditation, and symbolic reflection. The aim was not blind acceptance, but transformation of consciousness. Teachers guided students toward direct experience, reminding them that every genuine realization must arise within the seeker's own awareness. However, this emphasis on personal awakening also created tension. Many traditional authorities were concerned that these teachings could lead people away from established beliefs. The philosophical distinction between the monad and the craftsman challenged familiar interpretations of divinity. Debates emerged, some respectful and others intense, shaping the direction of spiritual development in the centuries that followed. In the next section, we will explore how these disagreements influenced the preservation and transmission of mystical knowledge, and how some ideas became hidden for long periods before re-emerging in later generations. As new spiritual movements grew and discussions about the nature of the divine became more widespread, some interpretations gained authority while others faced scrutiny. Certain communities embraced the idea of a single creator who governs all aspects of existence directly, while mystical teachers continued to distinguish between the infinite monad and the craftsman of the material world. Over time, these differing views influenced which teachings became part of the mainstream, and which remained in smaller, contemplative circles. Esoteric knowledge has often been transmitted quietly throughout history. In many ancient cultures, profound metaphysical insights were shared only with students who demonstrated readiness and discipline. This approach was not intended to exclude others, but to ensure that such knowledge would be understood in a balanced and responsible way. Symbols, analogies, and stories were used to introduce deeper truths gradually. Those who studied them carefully would uncover layers of meaning that were not immediately visible. When debates arose within spiritual communities, certain writings and teachings were set aside. Some leaders feared that complex philosophical ideas might confuse followers who preferred clear and simple explanations. Others believed that personal awakening should not be emphasized over collective practices. As a result, some documents were no longer copied and many were lost over time. Yet, dedicated students continued to preserve the wisdom they valued by keeping handwritten copies and passing them forward secretly. Centuries later, major discoveries revealed that this forgotten tradition had not vanished. The discovery of ancient manuscripts in Egypt during the 20th century brought forward texts that explored themes of inner knowledge, the nature of the soul, and the structure of the cosmos with remarkable depth. These writings demonstrated that the philosophical teachings of the early centuries had been far richer and more diverse than many previously assumed. The reappearance of these texts reignited interest in the ancient idea that spiritual truth must be discovered within oneself. Scholars and seekers alike recognized the universal themes embedded in these works: the journey toward self-awareness, the connection between humanity and the infinite, and the importance of questioning one's assumptions about reality. These teachings offered new perspectives for modern readers, linking contemporary interest in self-discovery with timeless philosophical insights. The preservation of esoteric knowledge throughout history reflects a recurring pattern. Ideas that encourage personal transformation often endure quietly, waiting for moments when they can be appreciated again. They survive because they resonate with the deepest parts of human nature, reminding individuals that life's greatest questions cannot be answered solely by external authority. In the next section, We will explore how the rediscovery of ancient philosophies has influenced contemporary thought, and why the idea of the monad continues to inspire seekers who feel that the visible world does not hold the entire truth. With the recovery of ancient philosophical texts, a new wave of curiosity has spread among modern seekers, historians, and scholars alike. The ideas once discussed in small circles now reach a global audience, inviting people to revisit the question of what lies beyond ordinary perception. In an age where science has explored the vastness of space and the depths of the mind, the notion of a hidden infinite source resonates more than ever. The monad offers a perspective that bridges spirituality and introspection, encouraging individuals to investigate the true nature of their awareness. Many people today feel a sense of disconnection, even in the midst of technological progress. The rapid pace of life can leave little room for reflection. Philosophical teachings about the inner spark remind us that fulfillment is not found solely through external achievement. Instead, a meaningful life emerges when one turns inward to recognize the presence of something constant beneath the changing circumstances of existence. Contemporary practitioners often reinterpret the ancient idea of the monad in ways that align with present-day understanding. Some view it as a symbol for pure consciousness, the field of awareness in which all experience arises. Others see it as the ultimate ground of reality, beyond scientific measurement yet essential to everything that exists. Regardless of interpretation, the concept challenges individuals to reconsider assumptions about identity and purpose. These teachings also inspire ethical reflection. When people perceive a deeper unity behind the diversity of forms, compassion becomes a natural response. Recognizing that every individual carries a hidden spark encourages respect, empathy, and cooperation. Moral principles become grounded not in obligation but in shared existence. The inner journey influences the way one participates in the world. The rediscovery of ancient cosmologies has also encouraged comparisons with other philosophical traditions. Some find parallels with Eastern teachings that describe the ultimate truth as beyond form and duality. Others note similarities with mystical strands of Judaism, Islam, and Christianity that emphasize direct experience of the divine. These connections suggest that the idea of an infinite source beyond perception is a recurring theme in humanity's search for meaning. Modern readers often appreciate the balance found in these teachings. They acknowledge the beauty of the physical world while reminding seekers that their identity extends beyond matter. They encourage engagement with life while pointing to a deeper dimension of being. In this way, the monad remains a living concept, one that continues to evolve as understanding grows. In the next section, we will explore how these philosophical insights can influence daily living, helping individuals navigate challenges with greater clarity, resilience, and self-awareness. Teachings about the monad and the inner spark are not meant to remain abstract theories. Ancient philosophers emphasized that the true value of knowledge is demonstrated through the way one lives each day. Insight becomes meaningful when it changes perception, behavior, and emotional responses. Even in ordinary situations, opportunities for awareness are always present. One foundational practice involves observing the mind. Instead of identifying with every passing thought, individuals learn to notice thoughts as temporary events. This creates a sense of space within the mind, reducing reactivity and allowing clearer choices. As awareness deepens, patterns that once seemed automatic become visible. The seeker gains the ability to respond with intention rather than habit. Another aspect of integrating this wisdom is recognizing the shared essence within others. Rather than viewing people only by their roles or differences, one begins to notice the deeper presence reflected in each individual. Conversations become more compassionate. Conflicts become opportunities to understand rather than to dominate. Relationships gain depth as empathy replaces judgment. The teachings also encourage finding meaning in challenges. Difficult experiences are seen as part of the journey that helps the soul grow stronger and wiser. Instead of asking why struggles occur, the seeker asks what can be learned from them. This shift in perspective transforms adversity into a tool for awakening. It nurtures resilience and patience, qualities valued in both ancient and modern contexts. Contemplation and moments of stillness are another important element. Setting aside time to reflect allows the inner spark to shine more clearly. This need not take the form of elaborate rituals. Simple practices such as mindful breathing, quiet walks in nature, or journaling can help reconnect attention with the deeper presence within. Over time, stillness becomes accessible even in busy moments. Living with awareness does not remove someone from the world. Instead, it enhances participation. The seeker remains engaged with family, work, and community, yet does so with heightened clarity. Material responsibilities continue, but they are no longer the sole measure of identity. A sense of inner purpose guides decisions and priorities, creating greater harmony between external actions and inner values. These practical applications demonstrate that ancient teachings are not relics of a distant past. They offer a framework for navigating modern life with wisdom. When one remembers that every moment contains the possibility for awakening, daily experience becomes a continuous path of self-discovery. This integration brings the journey full circle. The spark that once descended into matter begins to illuminate the world through conscious living. In the next section, we will explore how the individual journey contributes to a broader transformation of collective understanding, influencing culture, philosophy, and the future of spiritual exploration. When individuals begin to perceive their deeper nature, the effects extend beyond personal transformation. Awareness influences behavior, communication, and priorities. Over time, these personal changes shape the way communities think and act. Throughout history, moments of increased philosophical interest often lead to cultural renewal. The rediscovery of ancient teachings about the monad contributes to such a shift today. As more people explore the inner dimensions of consciousness, traditional assumptions about identity and reality are questioned. The idea that worth is determined solely by success or status gradually loses influence. People become more sensitive to the emotional and spiritual needs of others. Cooperation begins to replace competition as the primary motivation in relationships and communities. Philosophical perspectives that emphasize unity can also influence creative fields. Artists, writers, and musicians draw inspiration from the idea that deeper truths lie beneath ordinary appearances. Their work invites audiences to reflect on existence, purpose, and connection. Social values subtly change as appreciation grows for experiences that foster insight rather than distraction. Education also evolves when self-awareness becomes a priority. Learning expands beyond memorization to include reflection on what knowledge means and how it shapes one's life. Students are encouraged not only to understand information, but to understand themselves. This approach reflects the ancient belief that wisdom cannot be separated from personal growth. The scientific community benefits from this shift as well. While science examines the physical world, contemplation explores the nature of the observer. When both approaches are respected, they can complement each other. Discussions about consciousness deepen, and researchers explore questions once considered philosophical. A broader curiosity develops about how mind and matter interact. None of these changes occur overnight, yet they accumulate over time. Everyday choices influenced by inner clarity contribute to a more thoughtful and compassionate society. People begin to sense that humanity shares a common origin, even if its expressions appear diverse. Cultural progress becomes guided by understanding rather than fear. The collective journey remains open-ended. Ancient teachings remind us that discovering the deeper nature of existence is an ongoing process. Each generation brings unique experiences and challenges that shape how wisdom is interpreted. The renewed interest in the monad shows that the search for meaning continues to evolve. adapting to new environments while preserving essential insights. In the following section, we will explore practices that were traditionally used to support the awakening process, offering tools that encourage clarity, balance, and deeper connection with one's inner nature. During the height of ancient philosophical exploration, teachers offered practical methods to help students experience the truth of their inner spark. These practices were not intended to separate someone from the world, but to refine perception and strengthen awareness. They remain valuable today as they provide a structured way to reconnect with the deeper levels of consciousness. One common practice emphasized attentive breathing and quiet observation. The individual would sit comfortably, allowing the mind to slow without forcing it. By watching thoughts arise and fade, the seeker learned that awareness exists apart from mental activity. This distinction forms the foundation of spiritual insight. It helps one recognize that the core of identity is not defined by thought, but by the presence that notices thought. Contemplative study offered another important approach. Students would reflect on teachings, poetry, or symbolic stories that contained layered meaning. Rather than memorizing sentences, they allowed ideas to unfold gradually through personal interpretation. Wisdom emerged as the inner spark responded to the symbols, revealing new understanding over time. This encouraged independence of thought and deeper engagement with knowledge. Ethical discipline also played a central role. Philosophers believed that actions shape the clarity of the mind. When behavior is guided by kindness and honesty, emotional turmoil decreases and attention becomes steady. Choices rooted in respect and compassion support inner harmony, making it easier to remain aware of the deeper presence within. Ethical living was seen not as an obligation but as a practical tool for cultivating awareness. Many teachers encouraged a balanced life rather than extreme withdrawal. They advised students to maintain relationships, contribute to their communities, and approach daily activities with mindfulness. Work and family responsibilities became opportunities to practice presence. By bringing attention to simple tasks, the seeker learned to perceive deeper meaning in ordinary moments. In some traditions, guided visualization techniques were used to symbolize the ascent of consciousness. The seeker imagined traveling from the physical world through increasingly refined realms, leaving behind distractions and limitations. These visualizations strengthen the inner connection to the higher states of awareness described in philosophical texts. Above all, patience and consistency were emphasized. The awakening process was viewed as a gradual transformation rather than an instant achievement. Each small insight prepared the mind for greater understanding. Setbacks were considered natural, offering lessons in resilience and humility. These practices reveal that ancient teachings about the monad were not intended as abstract concepts. They were practical philosophies designed to support a meaningful life. Through these methods, individuals learn to align their daily actions with their deepest values, transforming existence from the inside outward. In the next section, we will explore the symbolic transition described in ancient writings when the soul completes its journey, fully recognizing its connection to the infinite source. In the symbolic narratives of ancient philosophy, the ascent of the soul eventually reaches its highest stage. When the inner spark fully awakens to its own nature, the soul experiences a profound shift. The boundaries that once created the sense of separation dissolve. The individual no longer perceives the monad as distant or hidden. Instead, the soul realizes that the infinite source has always been present as the essence of its own being. This realization is not described as an event that happens after death or in a distant realm. It is a transformation of awareness that can unfold even while a person continues to live in the material world. According to these teachings, the awakened soul sees through the changing forms of life and recognizes an underlying continuity. Joy arises not from external conditions, but from the recognition of unity with the origin of existence. The transition into this state is often depicted through metaphors. The sea and the drop are one of the most common images. Throughout the soul's journey, it has seen itself as a distinct drop moving through currents of experience. When awakening reaches completion, the drop realizes that it has always been part of the ocean. Individuality does not vanish, but is understood as an expression of the greater whole. This union with the monad represents the fulfillment of the soul's purpose. Every experience in the material world contributes to this awakening. The challenges that once seemed overwhelming become meaningful when viewed from the perspective of growth and remembrance. The ancient Hermetic texts taught that the soul returns to its source enriched by what it has learned, adding depth to the unity from which it emerged. Teachers described this realization as the ultimate form of peace. There is no desire for escape because nothing remains separate. There is no fear of loss because nothing can be taken from the essence of existence. Life becomes a flow of awareness guided by wisdom and compassion. The awakened individual engages with the world not as a struggle but as an opportunity to express the fullness of being. These teachings do not suggest an ending. They emphasize that consciousness continues to expand in ways that cannot be imagined while the soul remains bound to ordinary perception. The return to the infinite is both a culmination and a beginning. It opens the possibility of participation in the creative unfolding of existence itself. In the next section, we will explore how the story of the monad continues to inspire seekers and scholars, reminding them that the search for truth is a living tradition that evolves with every generation. The ideas surrounding the monad have traveled through centuries, adapting to different cultures, languages, and philosophies. They were expressed in the writings of early Greek thinkers, echoed in mystical interpretations of major religions, and studied by scholars of the Renaissance who revived interest in esoteric wisdom. This long continuity demonstrates that the search for ultimate truth has never ceased. It evolves as humanity's understanding grows. Today, many people encounter these teachings through fields as diverse as psychology, philosophy, comparative religion, and contemplative science. Discussions about the nature of consciousness have become increasingly relevant. Researchers, thinkers, and spiritual practitioners all explore the question of whether awareness is simply a product of the brain or whether it reflects a deeper foundation of reality. The ancient concept of the monad contributes to this exploration by suggesting that consciousness may be more fundamental than matter. The universality of this idea is part of its lasting appeal. Across the world, individuals report moments of clarity when they feel connected to something greater than themselves. These experiences may occur during meditation, creative inspiration, or even ordinary situations that reveal unexpected beauty. They remind people that life is not defined solely by survival or achievement, but by the depth with which one experiences existence. The living tradition of exploration encourages open inquiry. It invites individuals to look beyond familiar assumptions and to consider the possibility that the deepest answers may unfold through introspection. The teachings of the past are not final instructions, but guides that point toward direct experience. Each person who engages with this wisdom adds their own understanding, enriching the collective search. Communities built around these ideas often focus on sharing insights rather than enforcing beliefs. They support personal growth and encourage the exchange of perspectives. Differences in interpretation are not seen as obstacles, but as reflections of the diverse ways consciousness expresses itself. This approach honors the idea that the infinite source can be approached from many angles, each revealing a unique aspect of truth. The continuing interest in the monad shows that ancient wisdom remains relevant in a changing world. Modern life offers many distractions, yet it also provides unprecedented access to knowledge and connection. People seeking purpose may find in these teachings a reminder that fulfillment does not depend solely on external conditions. It grows from within, shaped by awareness and understanding. In the final section, We will bring together the key themes of this journey, reflecting on what the story of the monad offers to anyone who feels called to explore the nature of existence more deeply. Our journey began with a simple yet powerful question. What if the familiar image of creation is only the first layer of a much deeper reality? Through the teachings of ancient philosophers, we explored a vision of the universe in which the physical world is not the ultimate foundation but a stage within a vast unfolding of existence. At the heart of this vision lies the monad, the silent source from which all things emerge. The monad is not a distant ruler or a figure that demands devotion. It represents the essence of being itself, a presence beyond form and beyond thought. Everything that exists, from the smallest particle to the greatest star, carries a reflection of this source. Human beings with both physical form and inner awareness stand at a unique point where the visible and invisible meet. Within each person, the spark of the infinite continues to shine, quietly inviting recognition. The descent of the soul into the material world allows for a profound experience of individuality, growth, and transformation. Through challenges and discoveries, the soul gradually remembers what it truly is. Awakening unfolds as the spark within becomes visible to itself, illuminating a path that leads from confusion to clarity, from separation to unity. The teachings shared in this documentary are not merely historical curiosities. They offer a perspective that remains valuable for anyone seeking meaning today. They remind us that the search for truth does not end with external accomplishments. It continues inward, where awareness meets silence and where the deepest answers arise. By observing the mind, living with compassion, and recognizing the shared essence in all beings, one can begin to experience life from a broader viewpoint. The world remains the same, yet everything is seen differently. Moments of wonder become more frequent, understanding grows naturally. The spark becomes a guiding light. The story of the monad encourages humility and curiosity. It shows that reality is more mysterious than appearances suggest, and that every human being carries within them the potential for profound insight. The journey is personal, but it is also universal. Each awakening contributes to a larger movement of awareness, transforming culture, creativity, and understanding across generations. The ancient seekers who spoke of the monad did not ask others to believe blindly. They invited exploration. Their message is a reminder that wisdom is not given from outside but discovered through one's own direct experience. The path remains open for anyone who feels called to walk it. As we conclude this exploration, one thought remains. The spark within you is not separate from the infinite beyond you. It is the same light expressing itself in two ways. To discover this unity is to realize that the journey home has already begun, guided by a presence that has been with you from the beginning.